time is it? Say it's time for KP's Video News. KP's Video News. It's KP's Video News, y'all.
That's right. It's time for KP's Video News. And I don't know if you noticed, but in the background, this is a red tail, and a red tail is like the plane that the Tuskegee Airmen, the black heroes of World War II, the black pilots of World War II from that was based out of Tuskegee, Alabama, and that was one of the planes that they flew. And you probably saw the movie out a couple of years ago called Red Tails. And all those years, man, they hid the history. And this particular fighter pilot group never lost a single plane, not one plane. And they never lost not one plane that was flying, because they flew protection for the big bombers. They never lost a plane. And so got to give them their props. That's Red Tails, Tuskegee Airmen. Anyway, I'm gonna kind of switch this up a little bit, because my main story is about some assaults that happened about females in Arizona. I'm gonna do that at the end of this, but right now I'm gonna do a couple of updates. And the first update I'm gonna do is really kind of upsetting, because finally today, after all this time, Kentucky's Attorney General, and after facing increasing pressure to charge the police who fatally shot Breonna Taylor, and he finally met with the family today, and she got killed like back in March, which released few details. And Attorney General Daniel Cameron met with Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, and other family members to personally express his condolences, according to the release. And the statement did not provide any other details of the meeting, which took place at a state office in Louisville, but added that the investigation into the shooting is ongoing. And Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency medical worker, was killed by Louisville police serving a no-knock narcotics search warrant at her apartment on March 13th. They found no drugs in her home. An officer was shot during the raid by a boyfriend who had said he thought he was defending against a home invasion. And the state's first African-American Attorney General, Cameron, took over the case after the local prosecutor recused himself. He has seen increasing pressure from protesters in recent weeks. Dozens of activists who went to his Louisville home were arrested after they wouldn't leave his yard. In late July, an armed militia marched into downtown and demanded that Cameron make his decision within a month. Taylor's family and his high-profile celebrities from LeBron James and Oprah Winfrey have called for the 3 police officers who were at her home to be charged with her killing. And Cameron has asked everyone to be patient during the investigation, blah, blah, blah. And he said he was waiting on ballistic tests from the FBI. And speaking of FBI, this is the next story. This is the next update. And the FBI joins in the search for a missing Georgia woman. That's the picture that you saw at the beginning of this clip. And whose toddler was found wandering alone in Florida. And this past Sunday marked 2 weeks since LEILA CAVETT's 2-year-old son was found wandering alone outside an apartment complex in Miramar, Florida. But there is still no sign of the 21-year-old mother, and now the FBI has joined the search. LEILA of Dawsonville, Georgia, was last seen on July 25th, 2020 in Hollywood, Florida, driving a white mid to late 90s Chevy Silverado pickup truck with the red tailgate and baby on board sign on the passenger window. LEILA's 2-year-old son, Camden, was found the next day wandering around outside an apartment complex in Miramar, Florida. According to the Miramar police, he was barefoot and wearing only a t-shirt and a diaper. Ebony Williams, who lives in the complex, had just arrived home Sunday morning when she spotted the toddler outside and then realized he was alone. I asked him where his mommy was, and he just pointed everywhere. Ebony told reporters at the press conference the next day. I reached out my hand to him, and he grabbed my hand, and I just walked around the complex hoping I would find somebody looking for him or calling his name. But when no one claimed the child, she called 911. Miramar police responded and searched for hours that Sunday, knocking on doors, attempting to find the boy's parents, but they were nowhere to be found. As the day pressed, police became very concerned when no one stepped forward to claim the child. Within hour two, three, someone usually comes forward, and no one came forward, and no one called the police, looking for the child. After a day, LEILA CAVETT sisters who live in Alabama drove to Florida when they realized their nephew had been found alone and that their sister was missing. And they stated she lived in Dawsonville, Georgia, but had been staying with the family in Atlanta and doesn't know anyone in Florida. But the sisters added that they haven't seen her since July 17th. It's not out of character for her to go places, but it's definitely out of character for her to be in Florida, our sister said. And in July, when they were in Florida, they searched for Layla. We're in Alabama. She lives in Georgia. And I don't, if it's not those two states, we don't understand why she would be there. And so he's missing, the son is missing, his mom is confused, but we assured him that we're coming to get him as soon as we can, Layla's mother stated, and that's her worst nightmare. And on July 28th, the Silverado pickup was found abandoned in the parking lot of a Walmart in Hollywood, Florida, approximately 2 miles from where the son had been found the day before. At that point, police took over and searched, and last week the FBI announced they have stepped in to assist the Hollywood Police Department in the search. And everybody's looking and searching, and she's described as being 5'4", weighing about 110 pounds. She's brown shoulder-length hair and brown eyes. She has a tattoo that reads Camden, which is the name of her baby, on her right arm, and a small tattoo of a Christian fish symbol on her right wrist. And anybody who knows anything about that, please get in contact with the Hollywood Police Department or the FBI to try to find her. And this is the title story. Even though I had her picture on at the beginning of the article, I wanted to show her picture, but this is the title story about females assaulted by cops. And the Phoenix City Police Department has a history of sexual abuse cases. Studies suggest such misconduct is rampant in the United States. And wait a minute. What are they doing? So this article, I'm about to talk about here is pretty graphic. So, it's pretty graphic. So I'm just letting you know that right now. And so this is about a few females that are telling their stories about being sexually assaulted by cops. And the first one was about Gina Anderson. And she didn't want to be alone with a police officer, and it was about 10 p.m. on October 2015 in Phoenix, Arizona. Officer Anthony Armour had pulled her over into a dark parking lot. The police told her not to play dumb when she asked about the stop, and when she requested he called a supervisor so they weren't by themselves, he declined. Once the 47-year-old woman attempted to record him with a phone, he grabbed her by the wrist, forced her out, pinned her against the car, handcuffed her, and began his search, running his hand all under her skirt and all over her body, then moving his hands into her pockets and eventually down her pants and a thigh. According to accountants, he moved her into the back of his patrol car. She thought of a black woman named Sandra Bland, who was pulled over and died in custody a few months prior, and she fainted. Now, you can't even put words to the kind of fear she was facing, said Anderson, now 52 years old, who was pulled over due to an issue with her car insurance and taken to jail. I didn't think I was going to live through it. When she later got her phone back from police, Anderson discovered that someone, probably Armour, had used her camera to take a photo of her on the ground with the male officer standing over her. According to the lawsuit she later filed against the city that detailed her account of sexual assault. Anderson is speaking out for the first time as the U.S. is grappling with the deadly and racist legacy of law enforcement institutions in the wake of the George Floyd uprising. Police in cities across the country are starting to face scrutiny and some consequences for using fatal force, and mayors and chiefs are pledging to restrict the violent tactics that make American international leader in police killings. But there has been little reckoning over the one prevalent form of brutality entrenched in the culture of U.S. law enforcement, and that's the epidemic of sexual abuse by police. Studies have suggested that sexual misconduct on the job is rampant, with one investigation finding roughly 1,000 officers lost their badges for rape and other sexual offenses in a 6-year period. But it's likely these cases only scratch the surface of this form of state-sanctioned assault. The Phoenix Police Department has one of the deadliest records in the country and history of sexual abuse cases. Records obtained by the reveal that Officer Armour has multiple assault and misconduct allegations on his record, including sexual abuse, but has only faced a temporary suspension for one incident. And Anderson had never been arrested before that night. A longtime Phoenix resident working in healthcare accreditation. She had gone out that evening to pick up allergy medication from a pharmacy and cash from ATM, and her Yorkshire Terrier was in the passenger seat when Anderson heard tires squealing and saw a police SUV turn around and start trailing her. Armour's hostile tone immediately made her feel unsafe, she recalled. He kept saying, "You know why I'm pulling you over." Eventually, he told her that her license was suspended. She tried to show him a motor vehicles document she had received that day about an issue with her outdated insurance, but he wasn't interested. Anderson wanted a witness to the encounter, but Armour refused to call anyone. Filming was her last option, but she wasn't able to press the record button in time, she said. Anderson immediately felt excruciating pain like a lightning strike as Armour twisted her arm backward and dragged her out, and she cried as he started groping her and then fell silent. I had lost total control of the situation. In the police car, she recalled suffering panic attacks and collapsing face forward. And I said, "I can't breathe," she recalled, noting that other officers showed up to the scene. No one seemed to take her health concerns seriously, even though the paramedics arrived to treat her elevated blood pressure. They were like, "Stop faking it, you're going to jail." While she was sitting on the curb in custody waiting for a friend to arrive to get her dog, Dallas came up to her and licked the tears off her face, but she pleaded not to be taken alone with Armour, but the officer drove her away to the Phoenix jail. Anderson was booked for resisting arrest, threatened to a 6-month sentence and a $2,500 fine. Hundreds of cases, the ideal system for sexual violence. Between 2005 and 2015, there were 517 cases of forcible rape by police in the United States. And the second most common complaint against officers, sexual misconduct, and at least once every 5 days in the United States, according to one analysis. When people read the story in the paper about an officer charged with a sex crime, they think it's one officer. it's hard. It can't happen much, said Stinson. It's not until you get all the details as you realize this is a phenomenon is far beyond bad apples. Police typically charge and target the most vulnerable people group. In the 7-year period, Stinson found that half of the sexual misconduct arrests against officers involved minors. Daniel Holtzclaw, a serial rapist, was convicted for targeting 8 black women in Oklahoma when he was in uniform. Officers frequently assault women of color, domestic violence victims, informants, and women facing traffic stops. When you're pulled over by police, you have to comply or else they are legally entitled to enact several forms of violence against you, said Elisa Barrera, professor of ethnic studies at University of California, Riverside, and advocate for sexual assault survivors. It's a system that is organized in ways that are most ideal for a person who would engage in sexual violence, and a history of complaints and no discipline. In Phoenix, advocates say the same police culture that allowed officers to kill with impunity has enabled officers to attack on vulnerable women. In June, Phoenix prosecutors announced charges against Officer Sean Pena, who allegedly raped one woman and had handcuffed and sexually assaulted another. In 2015, Officer Timothy Morris was charged with sexually assaulting a handcuffed woman, but was acquitted after he claimed it was consensual. Wow, a consensual. Last year, an officer in the nearby city of Mesa was allowed to keep his badge and benefits after the city's own investigation found a pattern of sexual harassment of civilians and female officers. In July, it was also uncovered body camera footage showing a male officer tackling and slamming a young woman to the ground during a routine traffic stop, and the department said it was justified. Meanwhile, Gianna Anderson is not the first woman to speak up about Armour's conduct since he joined the department in 2006. In 2011, a woman accused him and a colleague of pulling her over for no reason into an alley and interrogating her alone at 2:30 a.m. In 2012, police investigated a complaint against Armour had engaged in sexual activity with a woman he was investigating for drug offenses. That same year, Armour was investigated for an incident involving a woman who had called 911 to report a possible prowler. His personnel records show when he arrived at the door, she had a knife in her hand, and Armour ended up shooting her. She survived and was charged with assault and drug possession. In 2015, February, he was accused of pushing a woman to the ground and leaving her on the concrete during an arrest. Police reports said there were no violations and no actions were taken. A few weeks after Anderson's arrest, Armour was again accused of barging his way into a home without authorization and arresting a woman inside, and the department later concluded he was guilty of false arrest, unlawful entry, and disobeying a supervisor and making multiple false statements. He received an 80-hour suspension. Last year, a woman was freed from prison after it was revealed that law enforcement failed to disclose Armour's record of lying. She spent 2 years behind bars. Anderson's prosecution dragged on for 9 months until the resisting arrest charge was dropped. During that time, she was recovering from physical injuries from the arrest, including a long-term shoulder injury, according to her complaint. When I hear the stuff he has done before, I knew in my gut he was lying. And Armour has not faced any discipline in the Anderson case. He was approved for early retirement last year at age 40 with a monthly pension of $3,000. And a Phoenix police spokeswoman, Mercedes Fortune, declined to comment on Armour's case, citing pending litigation. And attorneys for Armour did not respond to inquiries, but the court have said he denies her sexual assault and excessive force and did not take a photo of her with their phone. For survivors, the process of reporting sexual assault by police can be harrowing. Who do you call when your rapist is a police officer? In December 2018, Phoenix police stopped Erica Reynolds, as part of a drug investigation, and although they found no evidence in her car, took her to a police station. There, officers made her strip naked and conducted searches of her anal and vaginal cavities, which did not turn up any drugs. The officers did not have a warrant to search her, and last year the city concluded that the search violated policy, which says the searches require a warrant. With the judge's approval, it must be conducted by a medical professional. I wasn't going to allow them to get rid of it, get away with it. Reynolds, 38, told the Guardian, and so she immediately went to the hospital and reported it. I tried to do the best thing I can do and to get it checked out, and I said that she was raped by the police. The doctors did what they typically do when the patient reports sexual assault. They called the police. According to Reynolds' complaint, the police department declined to investigate or send a forensic nurse to conduct a rape kit. Doctors diagnosed her with sexual assault and rectal bleeding. Reynolds ultimately was never charged with any drug crimes, while the police acknowledged the search was out of policy and paid Reynolds a settlement. The department never acknowledged it constituted sexual assault. They were ready to rip up my whole life apart, she said, recounting the extensive investigation she faced as a suspect in the aftermath. They are going to do whatever they want and use the war on drugs as a cover-up. One officer received a 40-hour suspension, but the officials who ordered the illegal search were not punished. They all remain on duty, and Phoenix Police Department declined to answer questions about Reynolds' case. So, I mean, this is the list. It goes on and on and on and on and on, man. I mean, hey, it's so back to Reynolds. And Anderson eventually left Phoenix. The fear just wouldn't go away, and she said she needed to leave. Don't deserve to live like this, said Anderson, who had moved to Texas in February. While it's been easier to recover away from Phoenix police, she said the incident sometimes feel like it maybe happened a week ago, and she's hoping that more women will come forward. And she said, she was only one woman, but people need to fight. Police officers are supposed to serve and protect, but there was no one there to protect me that night. And it's a sad situation, man. Sad situation. It's been going on a long time. This is not anything new. That's why I'm bringing you this story. This is not anything new. Police assault and rape against specifically not just women of color, but predominantly women of color and juveniles. Juveniles, you're talking about teenagers that have been raped by cops. And a lot of these guys are still have badges. A lot of them are still on the police force. And just because you give them that little financial settlement, that does not give you the right to do what you're doing out there. And so we need total police reform, and we need to, you don't get to talking that crap about no bad apples, man, when you've had over, let me read that statistic again. You find that statistic, and that's the one that kind of caught me off guard. You talking about, what was that, how many thousand? Okay, yeah. From reckoning, that was finding roughly 1,000 officers lost their badges for rape and other sexual offenses in a 6-year period. In 6 years, only 1,000 cops have lost their badges for rape and other sexual offenses. And so don't talk that crap about one bad apple. When you talk about 1,000 bad apples, 1,000 cops lost their badges, and that's not including the ones that still have their badges, that are still out there raping and sexually offending women out there. It's time for a change, man. It's time for a change.
It's KP's Video News, y'all.
Peace.